Welcome to this episode of Biz Takeouts, Bizcommunity's sound-bite-sized news to go, made possible by IIE Rosebank College, an educational brand of the Independent Institute of Education, dedicated to providing students with a solid foundation, creating future thinkers to build successful careers. I'm your host, Angie White, and I'm very excited to introduce today's guests. This Women's Month, Mitcheline Williams and Voges, both student wellness managers at IIE Rosebank College, will be discussing the increased focus on mental health in both the education environment and the workplace, as well as the impact that COVID-19 has had on general wellness and the particularly challenging times women are facing. Welcome, Mitcheline and Claire.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you for having us.
Great. Thanks so much, Claire. Let's start with wellness in the education industry. What are some of the current trends you're seeing among students?
Well, I think the COVID pandemic has really hit every industry hard. And I think for students in the education industry, there's been a lot of change. There's been the transition from studying on campus to then studying online, which has been stressful for a lot of students, and particularly students who lack access to devices, connectivity issues, for students that are living in the rural areas and in hard lockdown had to go home, data issues, the expense of data. So that's created a lot of anxiety. And then moving back to on-campus and now a blended approach. So a lot of change to have to adapt to. And I think that this has affected the first years particularly because they're already transitioning from high school into a tertiary environment. And so it's been change. And with change comes a lot of stress and anxiety. So that we've seen a massive increase of. We've also seen an increase in mental health issues coming to the fore. So I think pre-existing mental health issues just being amplified by the stress and anxiety of the pandemic. But also, mental health issues that were perhaps undiagnosed are now becoming obvious. I suppose one of the positive things of the pandemic has been that it has shone a spotlight on the need for mental health services. Currently our public psychiatric facilities are 200% at capacity, which I think just indicates the massive need in South Africa for more accessible mental health services. So I think that, apart from also the grief and the loss of losing loved ones and the loss that comes with the other losses that comes with that in terms of loss of income, students stressed about being able to pay their fees, their studies hanging in the balance. Another very prevalent thing that has been specific to this pandemic and negotiating this pandemic has been around the quarantining, the self-isolating, the social distancing, mask wearing, almost the suspicion of the other. You see somebody and you sneeze and people look at you and you kind of, do you have COVID? Don't you have COVID? So instead of people sort of seeming as being safe and friendly and, suddenly there's this social disconnect. And with that has come an epidemic of loneliness. A recent Harvard study has indicated that older adolescents and young adults have actually been hardest hit with this sort of pandemic of loneliness and this feeling of being disconnected. And that then, of course, leads to depression, and depression can lead to suicidal ideation. So that's a big thing that we've had to monitor and just watch. And I think families need to monitor with their young adults.
Sure, it sounds intense. I think everybody's just going through a lot, and even more so now with everything else that's added onto it. So thank you for all of that information, Claire. And then Mitcheline, the next question is directed to you. COVID-19 has caused a great deal of uncertainty, stress, and anxiety, as Claire's mentioned, for most individuals. How and why does this pertain more to women during this time?
Thank you very much, Ange. traditionally, women have taken a bit more of a caregiver role in the household. And normally, that would be already a large mental load that they would have to deal with on a daily basis. But add to that the additional compounding pressure around safety, a lot of the support structures not being available, such as childcare, or adding to the additional, now I have a 40-hour week from home, but now I also have online classes at home, or I have someone that is ill that needs to be taken care of in the home. That stretches a lot of the female-headed households or female caregivers within the home, even if they have a supportive partner or support structures available. It increases that load that you have to cope with. A lot of the financially, one also has to have a look at the recent study that came out from Stats SA that's saying that 36.8%, I stand to be corrected, unemployed females in the second quarter of 2021. That means a large number of female-headed households would not have an income. There would be concerns around provision for my family, myself, the goals and things that I needed or wanted to have for this year. And then a third component also around gender-based violence. During lockdown, a number of the support structures were not available. A lot of people were trapped with perpetrators or in circumstances within which they could not leave. And as we know, gender-based violence is a lot more prevalent towards females within the South African context.
Yeah, definitely a lot more challenges there than usual. And with this, the next question talks about the new normal, which sees many working and studying from home, as you've just mentioned, which carries a host of new challenges and is also a huge adjustment. What tips can you offer to those who are struggling right now?
The one is, I don't like the word new normal. There's nothing normal about the circumstances. We are living in a pandemic. Everything has changed. This is not normal. Yes, it's different. And yes, it might have made permanent changes to how we function or do certain things, but it's by no means normal. Coping skills is also very different for each person, and we need to take that into consideration. But some general feedback we can give is readjusting your expectations to yourself. We are not living in normal times. You cannot measure yourself against the same yardstick you did before. Doing a 40-hour week at work with work Wi-Fi versus trying to do a 40-hour work at home, sharing your Wi-Fi with students that are doing their classes online, or with fellow family members or partners doing their 48-hour workout day at home is a bit more of a challenge. The second one is having a look at what are the successes of your day. There is a lot of negative information and a lot of focus is on what I should be achieving. Having a look at what have I done well for today. The kids are fed, the house is relatively clean, I have completed X amount of tasks. Looking for your successes helps you to feel better about yourself. Third one, we are a connected community. Making sure that you make time to meet your friends and family. Yes, keeping in mind COVID protocols, but that emotional support that we get from speaking to others, not necessarily only on FaceTime, but making time to see other family members will help and support you to be able to address or to deal with everyday circumstances. And then last but not least, making time for yourself. That is a very big one. And I know that people with families say, but I can't, they even want to go with me to the bathroom. But there's 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be an extended period of time. 5 minutes in the morning before they wake up, 5 minutes at night, 5-minute walk in the garden, even if it's just once in the week. You give so much at work, online, to your family, to your partner. When are you making sure that you are refilling and maintaining yourself to be able to provide and to give to others? That's what I would say for coping.
Definitely a lot of excellent points there, but that's refilling your own cups so that you can fill up others' cups. Definitely a firm believer in that one as well. So thank you very much for those tips, Mitcheline. And then Claire, in our previous episodes, we focused a lot on tips for interviews and entering the world of work. But there's much to be discussed about coping with the new environment and expectations in the workplace, and even more now so. Can you offer some advice to those who are feeling overwhelmed and fatigued in their job right now, and how they can overcome and keep persevering?
Absolutely, Angie. I think the majority of us are feeling overwhelmed and fatigued. If you aren't, then please give me give me some tips yourself. But there are definitely things that one can put in place. I mean, a recent study done by Pharmacodynamics in South Africa indicated that 81% of South Africans are actually turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms, unhealthy eating, alcohol, using substances. And so that's a big danger. And in terms of, I think, the fatigue, one needs to identify the source of the fatigue. So are you physically fatigued? Are you mentally fatigued? Are you emotionally fatigued? The physical fatigue is, I think, sometimes easier to deal with. You know, it's easier maybe to take a power nap or sit down and have your cup of tea, as Mitcheline has mentioned. But I think the one to really pay attention to is the mental and emotional fatigue. Because if we ignore that, that leads to burnout. And we don't want to be there because that takes much longer to recover from. And so in terms of mental fatigue, what I found is quite a useful tool is something that was developed by Stephen Covey, who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it looks at a diagram of concentric circles, and the outside circle is your circle of concern. So those are the things that you might be worried about, you might be concerned about, but you have absolutely no control over. So the pandemic sits there, government decision sits there. Yes, it's on our mind, but we don't have any power in terms of our own decision making or our own action to bring about any change in that circle. Then the next circle is our circle of influence. So we have a certain amount of ability to make some changes there, but we have to acknowledge that there are variables that are going to impact that we can't change. And then the small circle in the middle is your circle of control. And I think if you recognize that, that's where most of your sort of mental and emotional energy needs to go. You know, it's useless sort of spending unnecessary energy worrying about that which you can't control. And I think that that's a useful thing just to keep in mind. So that's one of the sort of ways of coping with that feeling of being mentally fatigued and overwhelmed. I think, as Mitcheline said, just realistic expectations and setting small daily goals, so that by the end of the evening, you feel like you've accomplished something. And then having structure. I think this whole sort of pandemic and the working from home, you know, working from home and looking after kids from home and multitasking, and everything's just blended into this big kind of murky water, and people are struggling with that because there's no clear delineation of, okay, work, I close my door, I leave the office, now it's home time. And so, you know, it's even been reported that people are actually working longer hours now that they're working from home. You know, it's easy just to quickly go to your PC after dinner and check your emails. So I think what's really important is having a good structure. So doing certain things at a similar time every day, even though you might be working from home. I think some of us have worn our sweatpants for way too long. There's something to be said, I think, about, you know, getting up, showering, getting ready for work. And even if you're not going out to the office, it's helpful just that kind of to have that mental preparation for the day. Instead of sort of rolling on a bed and booting up the PC, turning the coffee machine on, which I have been guilty of. I'm sure we've all done that a couple of times. But another thing I think is prioritizing sleep, and sort of keeping a regular sleep schedule. And those of you who are caffeine lovers, I'm included in that equation. Just remember that caffeine has a half-life 46 hours in the system. So if you're drinking coffee after lunchtime, it's definitely going to affect the quality of your sleep. And then the last point, I think, around just coping with mental fatigue and feeling overwhelmed is around decisions that you can put on autopilot, put them on autopilot. So, for example, what to eat for breakfast. I mean, I know it's a silly example, but if you don't need to decide what to eat for breakfast, then that's one less thing in your mind space. So eat the same thing for breakfast. Variety is the spice of life, but variety can come back later when we have a bit more, I think, emotional and mental energy to spare. So that's something that can be just a useful tip in terms of just freeing up some mental energy.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Clay. And then the next question is directed to both you ladies. What type of support can students and employees expect from their educational institutions and employers during this time? And where and how can they find help if they need it? Okay, let's start with me.
Well, I think that help-seeking behavior is really important. And one of the positive things, I mean, not that there are many positive things that have come out of COVID, but one of the positive aspects is that I think that it's become more normal to seek help, particularly in terms of mental and emotional distress. And so that I think there's less stigma around help-seeking behaviors. Different institutions and different workplaces will provide different services, obviously. At Rosebank College, every campus has a wellness department, which has a student wellness manager. And we've really focused on holistic well-being. So we try to kind of really look after the students in terms of, many aspects of their lives. And so in terms of the mental health components, we provide support sessions and counseling sessions, both face-to-face and then online and telephonic, particularly for those students that might be isolating or in quarantine or unable to come to campus. And then also we run social awareness and education campaigns on a number of different wellness topics. What we've then done is also create an online folder for student wellness that students can access remotely. And in that folder are video clips from stress management to study tips to brain food, nutrition around exam time, mindfulness and sort of relaxation techniques. So we've really tried to sort of pack it full of holistic wellness tips and information for students. And then in terms of the physical well-being, which I think that a lot of people have sidelined in COVID, gyms have been closed, and also just feeling exhausted. The last thing you want to do is exercise. But I think, ironically, that physical exercise alleviates a lot of the mental and the emotional fatigue and stress. And so Rosebank College has partnered with IIE College, which is a college that trains the physical health professionals out there. And we have managed to get access to an amazing app called the My Wellness app for our students to use for free. And it's an app whereby you can select the workout of the day, depending on your fitness level. And so, for example, the beginner's workout is 20 minutes. It doesn't require any special equipment. You can do it at home. And so it's easy, it's user-friendly. And we're hoping that in the absence of, gyms, I mean, I know some gyms are open, but some people are still fearful and a bit scared of going back to those sort of public spaces, exercise. Our students can still look after their physical well-being. And I'm going to hand over to Mitch to tell you about some of the other resources available.
Thank you, Clay. So if you are not a Rosebank College student, there are a number of NGOs and NPOs within the broader South African context that provide support and wellness services available free of charge, and sometimes they do provide it on a means scale. So some of the organizations you would be looking at is the South African Depression and Anxiety Groups, SADAG. They specifically have different support groups available, contact or on Zoom. They have 24-hour counseling lines, and they are very helpful. If you do give them a call, they can link you with resources in your area, in your community. The second organization is such as Lifeline. They have a 24-hour call line. They have a WhatsApp line. They have a gender-based violence line, as well as an HIV line. And these are all free services that you can do from your home, from a cell phone. Other organizations would also be such as FAMSA South Africa, where they look at a more holistic family approach, where you can do individual sessions. They do sometimes have a means test based on what you can afford. So just because my employer does not maybe is not able to offer wellness services. Maybe we're a very small company, or maybe my school does not have that specific service. SADC does do some public institutions. They have one specifically for frontline health workers, and they also have one specifically for people in the food industry or the leisure industry, which was most impacted by COVID. So there are resources available. We just need to make sure that we are aware of where they are to be able to access them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. I think we've touched on so many important aspects in this interview, and there's a lot of great advice for our audience. So thank you very much to both of you for joining me today and for the amazing advice. That's a wrap on today's show, with thanks to the IIE Rosebank College for making it possible. Biz Takeouts, take it where you like it, when you like it. Until next time.